In today's episode of Comics and Cosplay, get your shields ready as we review Marvel's new feature-length film, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So I'm sure you're going, la 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 la, Ian, don't ruin the movie for me, I haven't seen it yet. Well, don't worry, this is completely spoiler-free. We're only going to be talking about generic thoughts and feelings I had about the movie. But once you do see the movie, come back and check out part 2 so we can discuss all the good juicy details about Captain America: Winter Soldier. So here's an overview of the movie. The basic plot is taken from the Ed Brubaker comic run from a few years ago, except it's been slightly adapted for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Essentially, we're now living in a post-Avengers world in which the general population knows about the Avengers and other superhero characters. And this movie starts off with us looking at seeing what Captain America has been up to essentially since the invasion of New York. We come to learn he's essentially become a full-time S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and is helping them deal with different threats. The basic plot of this movie is the occurrence of Captain America teaming up with Nick Fury, Black Widow, and newcomer Falcon to take on a new threat threatening the world as well as S.H.I.E.L.D. itself. So let's talk about a few things I really enjoyed about the movie. First, this movie has amazing pacing and some of the best I've ever seen in any comic book or superhero movie ever. Unlike other movies that hold your hand or spoon feed you every detail or plot development, this one really jumps right in, and I enjoy it. It almost assumes or feels like the directors had comic book readers in mind, but it's not so drastic so that if you're not a comic book reader that you'll be lost in the movie. I really hope a lot of movies will take on this development because it allows the movie to move at a quicker pace and spend more time on the important aspects and not delving into the minutiae and details of every little plot development. Next on my list is this is a great spy espionage type movie, and it's really well done at its core and doesn't rely on it just being a superhero Captain America movie. It almost feels like you could find this plot in La Bourne Identity or James Bond type series. Plus, I like to see Captain America in this new role instead of being, Avenger superhero and now super soldier, spy extraordinaire. Next on the list is the amount of action in the movie. If you came to see people get punched and hit in the head with a shield, then this is the movie for you. This movie has a ton of action in it. Every time the movie starts to dip just a little bit, it kicks up with a bigger and better action sequence. I only had one small gripe about it, and that some of the action sequences are shot incredibly up close and tight, and you can only just see fists and legs being kicked and punched here and there. Whereas there are other scenes that are really expansive and you get to see all of the beautiful choreography that's been planned for the movie. I suspect this is because the movie has two directors and you're seeing their different styles take part here and there. However, as a whole, it's still really great and these scenes are amazing to look at. Finally on my list is The Winter Soldier. They capture the tone and effect of this character perfectly, even better so than in the comic book. Every time he shows up on screen, you get this ominous feeling in your stomach that you never know what he's going to do next. And they convey that creepy, sinister mood all throughout the movie. And it's amazing. They even capitalize on showing how much of a badass he is in the various fight and action sequences. In some ways, he almost steals the movie from Captain America himself. So now let's turn gears and talk about a few things I didn't really love about The Winter Soldier. And I will admit right now, some of my criticism is going to be pretty generic and vague because I don't want to give anything away. But come back and watch part 2 of my spoilers review and we can talk about the real details and I can give more explanation about the things I didn't like. First on this list is the villain. I think they've created an incredibly weak villain that's a one-dimensional character and their motivations are a little too cartoony and harken back to the days of old comic book movies. I think they could have fleshed this character out a lot more and done a lot more with him. This is why I always contend Thor had one of the best villains ever, because Loki's motivations were really true and humanistic and really believable that someone would take all these great steps to accomplish a certain goal. I think they could have fixed this character and expanded on them a lot more, and it would have made the movie an amazing A+ movie, but then because of it, it's more of a A- B+ type movie. Also affected by this weak villain is the final battle scene. It could have been a lot greater and more epic, but because of the limitations already created by the main villain, that it really drags the movie and boxes it in to certain avenues that it has to go down. And I'll explain in more detail what I'm really talking about in my spoilers episode as to why the final battle didn't really work for me and its resolution seemed a little wonky. Finally, and this might be a slight nitpick, but I think the movie could have used a lot more Falcon. Anthony Mackie does an amazing job and I was quite impressed with how he handled the role. The only problem is I think we don't really get to learn about the character as much as we should and understand his motivations for wanting to help Captain America. I think he's only pretty much used as a comedic relief and plot devices for various points in the story. I wish Marvel had put more emphasis on this character and we'd see more of him throughout the movie. So here are my final thoughts about the movie. I thought this movie started out amazing and had the potential to be one of the best Marvel movies ever. That's right, even better than Avengers. However, the weak villain and the way the final scenes kind of wrapped up dropped it down a couple of pegs in my book. I would say it ranks right behind Iron Man and Avengers. However, that said, don't get me wrong, it's still an amazing movie and something you should go see. Now, I didn't see it in 3D or IMAX, so I can't recommend those versions, but even the standard definition was an amazing visual effect and was something you must not miss. But we aren't finished just yet. This is comics and cosplay after all, so let's talk about the costumes. First, starting off with Captain America. I love that they have him in the Steve Rogers SHIELD agent uniform, which is the blue bodysuit with the silver star and stripes. It's amazing and it looks great on screen, and they really captured this and were able to transfer the look from the comic book onto the movie screen. I think this is going to be a huge hit that we're going to see at tons of conventions going forward. As for Black Widow, they haven't changed too much about this character. She's still basically in a black bodysuit, except they've only moved a few of the straps and buckles to different places along the costume. As well as she's now sporting long straight red hair as opposed to the short bob that she had before, which I think I actually liked better than the current hairstyle she's rocking in this movie. As for the Winter Soldier, they did a great job, as evidenced by the fact that there's already numerous cosplayers doing this costume already. They took what was in the comic book and translated it perfectly to the cinematic universe, and it doesn't look out of place and still feels very believable. I only think a few scenes the arm looks a little fabric-y and not as metallic as it should be, but that's a small complaint on what is overall an amazing costume. As for Falcon, I didn't really love his look in the movie. Now, I'm not advocating they should have taken his comic book look and applied it to the movie. I just think they could have come up with something more dynamic and interesting for him as a whole. The backpack, they did an amazing job. It looks really believable and like something someone could really use to fly around and do all the amazing feats he does. I just think they could have taken some of that energy and applied it to his costume as a whole so he'd be a much more interesting character to look at. Finally on this list is Nick Fury. Now, I understand and appreciate they tried to switch up his look that he's worn in every other movie, which is essentially a black t-shirt, black trench coat, and black pants. But what they came up with was not so hot. I think they should have spent a little bit more time on the drawing board, and they could have came up with something much more unique and innovative for this character. That's it for today's episode. Don't forget, once you've seen the movie, to come back and watch part 2 of our Captain America Winter Soldier review, as I'll be going into much more detailed analysis of the movie. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our videos so you don't miss out on any future episodes like our convention cosplay videos as well as our tutorial series. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at Comics and Cosplay, as I post links to a lot of other great cosplay tutorials as well as news about conventions, comic books, and movies. As always, I'm your host Ian from Saturday Morning Cosplay, and I'll see you on the con floor.